Hello, and welcome to the National Breast Cancer Coalition's webinar to discuss our urgent action campaign for the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. I'm Melanie Wyne, and I'm the Chief Policy Officer at NBCC. And I want to especially welcome those of you who are joining us for the very first time to learn about this issue and our urgent action. And we hope that you find this session informative and that it will inspire you to join us in taking action on this really important issue. Before we jump into sort of the meat of the program, I want to just mention a couple of housekeeping matters. The session is being recorded and it will be available on our website most likely later today. And we'll be taking questions. There is a Q&A function here in the Zoom that you can type your questions in. You can do that at any time, but we'll be handling questions at the end of the session. And we'll try to get to as many of them as we can. So again, welcome. And just quickly, I want to go over the agenda of what we're going to talk about today. I'm going to start us off giving an overview of the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. We're going to hear from two of NBCC's advocates who are going to talk about their personal experience with breast cancer and share some perspectives on the bill. And then Maggie Bush, my colleague Maggie Bush, is going to sort of wrap things up for us, talking about what actions you can take to help us in this urgent action campaign. So with that, we'll get started on the background of the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. Initially, this bill, and we'll talk about this a little bit later, but it has to do with waiting periods for Social Security, disability insurance, and Medicare. And the reason that these waiting periods were put into place back in 1972 was that it was intended to limit Medicare costs, to avoid displacing private insurance coverage, and to ensure that Medicare coverage was extended only to people whose disabilities were severe and long-standing. So for example, if someone was doing work at their home and fell off a ladder and hurt their back and then started claiming disability, policymakers wanted to make sure that a person in that situation was no longer collecting insurance benefits once that sore back resolved. But in the matter that we're discussing here, metastatic breast cancer isn't a condition that's going to resolve itself. So it's really not compatible with these waiting periods. So just a bit of background on NBCC's track record and work on this issue. So advocates recognize the problem of the waiting periods and the fact that patients that critically needed their health care and their disability insurance were being denied that coverage. So we wrote this legislation, and then back in 2019, we recruited bipartisan leaders in Congress to introduce the bill. And we've been working on this legislation since 2019. So since that time, we've held more than 25 lobby days focused on this bill, and thousands of advocates have taken action either in person or online or back home in their communities, meeting with their members of Congress back home. And we've recruited over 150 organizations to support this bill as well. So what does the bill do? And the bill number is in the House is House Resolution 2048. And as I mentioned at the top, what it does is for eligible individuals who've been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, it waives a 5-month waiting period for Social Security disability insurance and a 24-month waiting period for Medicare. And these waiting periods are sequential. So that means that it's in total a 29-month waiting period. And as many of you probably know, currently, the average life expectancy for somebody diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer is still 3 years. So folks are essentially waiting almost the entire average life expectancy to gain the benefits that they've actually earned. So why do we need urgent action right now? So we are currently in the 4th Congress that we've been working on this bill. And just a little bit of background in how Congress works. A particular Congress lasts for 2 years. So we are currently in the 119th Congress, and we are coming up to the end of that Congress. At the end of this year, the 119th Congress will end. And any bill that has been introduced in this Congress, if it isn't passed and signed into law, we essentially have to sort of start back over again. So when I say we've been working on this bill for 4 Congresses, that's nearly 8 years. And so we have until the end of the year to try to get this bill passed in this Congress. And we currently are in a situation where we've never had the amount of support in the committee of jurisdiction. So in Congress, there are a number of committees that are formed, and they're sort of the members of those committees become issue experts on particular issues, and bills need to move through a committee before it gets brought to the floor of the House for a vote. And we currently have over 2/3 of the Ways and Means Committee, which is the committee of jurisdiction for this bill, supporting the bill. And so we've never had that kind of support, very strong bipartisan support. So we're using that momentum right now to really push in the committee and to push leadership to make sure that this bill gets marked up in the committee, so gets considered by the committee, and then moves to the floor for a vote. And if for some reason the committee decides that they're not going to mark up the bill, we do have other legislative strategies available to us. And that's why we continue to push to ask members of Congress to co-sponsor the bill, which means that they officially sign on in support of the bill. We currently have 250 bipartisan co-sponsors on this bill, which is frankly more than 1% of bills in this Congress. But the more co-sponsorship we gain, the more members of Congress we get to sign on and they support it, the more avenues that are available to us to try to get the bill passed. So while we're focused on the committee, we're also focused on adding broad support for the bill so that we have, so that opens up more options for us to try to move the bill. So part of the reason we're holding this webinar is to give you this background and to engage you all, to tell you how you can help us in our push that we're going to have going from now until the end of the year to try to get this bill passed. So I'm going to stop there, and then we're going to hear some advocate stories. I believe we're going to hear first from Denise Smith. So Denise, if you'd like to join us and share your story with us.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Melanie, and thank you for giving us such a great background to help us understand this bill. Good morning to everyone, and thank you for attending this webinar. I'm Denise Smith. I'm from the state of Utah and been working with NBCC for 4 or 5 years now. And I'm so glad that you're getting involved and are involved with NBCC, especially as we push to get the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act passed this year. My breast cancer journey began when I lost my mother to breast cancer when I was 22. Years later, in 2005, I was diagnosed with this disease. And in 2018, I learned I was living with metastatic breast cancer, which, as you've heard, has an average life expectancy of 3 to 5 years. I decided I would use whatever time I had to try to change the course of this disease and make a difference for people who would come after me. Each of us has a story, and it's up to us to decide what we will do with that. I'm alive because NBCC fought for and continues to fight for the Department of Defense Breast Cancer Research Program, which supported the research that led to my current treatment and has given me now 8 years post-diagnosis of metastatic breast cancer. And I am determined to use my given time fighting for Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. I lost my cousin Tarina over 2 years ago to metastatic breast cancer. She couldn't afford to lose her insurance, so she worked just days until she entered hospice. Tarina would have benefited from the Metastatic Breast Cancer Access to Care Act. She and so many like her shouldn't have to worry about money for medication in their final days. The funding of this act is from an earned working benefit, as you've heard. The bill is only asking to eliminate the waiting periods for individuals like my cousin. Those that qualify, those that meet the, the regulations, it isn't a big, huge amount to people, but it's significantly impacting women and men. It also thus allows, when we give this benefit to them, to be for those to be able to spend time with their families and focus on what really matters. NBCC gives me and you a platform to show the people in power in our government that those with metastatic breast cancer are real women and men. We live in your state, in your neighborhoods, your communities. We deserve access to quality care, and we are determined to make sure our friends, neighbors, and families with this disease don't have to wait anymore. NBCC has empowered me to act, and I'm proud to be among all of you who also make a difference. We all have ways we can help by sharing our experiences with this disease, by offering our time, resources, and connections. We need it all to achieve our goal to get this act to the floor of the Congress for a vote this year. I know that it's a long pathway to try to get this bill to the floor, and we are very, very close in doing this. I have worked through several sessions of Congress, working with my congressmen, men and women who I thought would never sign on, and just continue to not give up, to continue to fight the fight and go in there and say, this is why we need this and why it's so important. We all can do this to achieve this goal this year. Thank you for your commitment to this fight. I know you wouldn't be on this call if you weren't wanting to join our efforts in fighting for this cause. The work we are doing is going to make a huge impact, not just for me and you, but for so many down the road that will come after us. Thank you.
Tonsa, do you want to share your story?
Yes, good morning, everybody. My name is Tonsa Price Edwards, and I'm coming to you from Scottsdale, Arizona. And I am both honored and horrified, if you will, at the same time, because I know the impact that this passage of this bill can have. My particular story is like so many others. I started this dance with breast cancer in actually 2007. I did all the things that I was supposed to do, air quotes, if you will. I had radiation, a lumpectomy, and the chemotherapy as well. I lived my life free and clear and thriving. And then in 2020, unfortunately for me, the beast returned, and it returned as metastatic. And I did not recognize or know much about metastatic breast cancer, but believe you me, that diagnosis, quick, fast, and in a hurry, taught me lots of things that I needed to know. I have been part of the National Breast Cancer Coalition. I found this group about 2 years ago, and for me, it was the impact that they were having, both through the work that they've done with the Department of Defense in terms of getting research dollars for specifically for breast cancer research, and then also the work that they have done legislatively to make a difference. If you think about metastatic breast cancer, it is something that we are pushing the boundaries of today. We are living longer. So as I mentioned, I went metastatic in 2020, and so I'm almost 6 years out. I have also gratefully defied the odds of that 3-year period. But if I had had to wait for coverage and to be able to afford that care, I could not have done that. My average monthly cost for my medicines, if you are on some of the life-saving drugs, again, that NBC has helped to guide and develop, but my monthly costs are $20,000 a month. I have worked in executive positions. I've had great career, wonderful jobs, terrific health care. I could not afford to pay that out of pocket. And so a woman who has worked and paid in, you saw 5 out of the last 10 years, is eligible for benefits. Nobody, almost nobody, can afford this level of care given the expense. And I have personally been impacted by this. I lost a very dear friend this past winter. She could not afford her medicines. She was not eligible for any other assistance programs long term. And we lost a bright light, a person who worked in the nursing field. She cared for others her entire life. Her name was Monica, and she was a beautiful soul. And it crushed me to the core that this is a person, again, who earned this benefit and was not able to access it. She did not have 29 months to wait in order to get care. If you think about what we're asking for when you're talking to these legislators, because I know each and every one of you who's on this call is also on fire to get this through, get this passed. This session, this 119th, is going to be our lucky based on all the efforts that NBCC has done over the years. Think about what the precedent is. We are not asking for something that we have not earned. We are not asking for something that hasn't set a precedent before. There are 2 other diseases that you can reference, end-stage kidney failure and ALS. Those particular diseases also, because they are chronic and deadly, do not have these kind of waiting periods. So again, there's been some precedent set for what we're asking these individuals and Congress folks to do. We talk about, and I know my own representatives have pushed back on the cost, but if you think about the smaller percentage of NBC patients who would be eligible for this, and also those who could access it, it is not a large number. And so it is mind-boggling that we've continued to struggle to get this over the line. I am particularly energized, as they said we've got the most bipartisan support that this bill has had in a very long time. I know even though my representatives have not signed on, I continue to call them every Tuesday is my call into that office. I had the opportunity to meet with my representative at Lobby Day, and again, NBCC afforded me that opportunity. So I'm not just a lone voice calling in and reminding him of the conversation that we had. But I want to thank each and every one of you for continuing to be in this fight with us and for us, and know that we will make a difference, not only for ourselves, but also for those who can no longer speak and for those who come behind us. So thank you very, very much. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tonsa. Hi, everyone. My name is Maggie Bush. I'm the field director for NBCC. I have had the opportunity and privilege to work closely with both Tonsa and Denise, throughout the last several years, and with many of you who came and joined us and took time out of your day to be here today. It is the privilege of a lifetime to have the opportunity to work with breast cancer advocates as part of NBCC all over the country. You all are doing more every day to fight, as Denise said, not only for yourselves and your loved ones, but for those who will come after us, for our daughters, for our grandchildren, and for everybody else that we hope will not be impacted by this disease. To know that advocates like Denise and Tonsa are working this hard, even as they're fighting for their own families, fighting for your own health, is truly incredible. And it is absolutely the reason we are closer than ever to getting this done on Capitol Hill. So thank you for your time. Thank you, Denise and Tonsa, for your vulnerability and sharing why this matters. As you can see in the chat, you're making an impact on everyone who is here to listen to your stories today. And thank you to those of you who have asked questions. We are going to get to those in a couple of minutes. I just wanted to quickly share a few ways that you all can get involved in this campaign. So there are two ways to take immediate action. I'm going to put these in the chat, and all of this is also going to be shared in an email after today's webinar. Please visit our online action center and write your member of Congress. I've seen lots of you asking in the chat, how do I know which members of Congress from my state already support this or do not? The good news is there's a very easy sortable list. We've put that in the chat as well as in the Q&A, and we'll go ahead and include it in our follow-up email as well. Our system on our online action center also knows when you put in your address and zip code, it will know whether your member has co-sponsored already, or if they sit on the Important Ways and Means Committee, or if they have not co-sponsored to date. And it will customize the message for you before you hit send. So that makes it easy for you. The other thing that is really impactful is making phone calls. So we're going to provide you with the number. It's here on the slide. I'm going to put it in the chat as well in a second. It will provide you with a directory once you call to be directed to your member based on your zip code, and we'll provide a short script as well. And the message is, we need you to do everything you can to get this bill over the finish line. Our advocates have been making hundreds of calls up to Capitol Hill over the last few weeks as part of this campaign, and we absolutely know that those offices are noting it. If you get enough calls, even 10 calls in a day to a single member, we know that that gets elevated to the member of Congress themselves, and they hear about it. They know that people are calling in about this issue. So please have that be your inspiration to make those calls. Tonsa said she calls every Tuesday. I know other folks, Carol Matika, who I think is on the call today, she is having her Massachusetts advocates, and you may be one of them, calling every other day or so. So you can absolutely make a difference through your phone calls. And then on the next slide, we also have a social media guide. So again, we know social media is a powerful tool. It can be a powerful tool to thank our members for their leadership in doing the right thing. It can also be a powerful shaming tool or a pressure tool, maybe is a more polite way of saying it, to say, we really need to see your name on this bill. We need to see you stepping up and demanding action. And we're going to keep on you until we see that. So please take a look at the social media guide that we can provide for you. Again, it'll be in the follow-up email, and we've written the posts for you. You can select which ones you want to share, or you can always share the posts that we at NBCC are putting out across all the different social media channels every single day about this. I want to preview that on Tuesday, we will have a big day of national action. You'll receive an email on Monday morning with a lot of the information we've already provided here today. It will ask you to take action on Tuesday. On Tuesday, we have a number of advocates coming in, including Denise, who you just heard from, coming into Washington, D.C. to lobby their members of Congress and to put the pressure on. In addition to those in-person visits, we want to make sure that offices all across Capitol Hill are hearing from NBCC advocates about this. So we'll be asking you specifically to be getting the word out to your networks. If you're part of a support group or an organization, please do share this information out, and let's make a big splash on Tuesday. So with that, I think we're going to turn it to questions. So I know we did see some questions about co-sponsors, which I think folks have gotten the link to. I also saw Michelle, I saw you wrote a chat asking to have your organization signed on to our list of supporters, and we can absolutely do that. So I've made note of that. If you represent an organization and would like to add your organization's name as a supporter of the bill, we can do that for you. Just reply to the follow-up email that you get from us, and we'll make sure that that happens. Melanie, Janine has a great question in the chat. If our member is already a co-sponsor, what else can we do? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Okay, no, it's a really good question. There's a couple things you can do. First of all, thanking them for being a co-sponsor is really important. We do a lot of work kind of making demands on members of Congress, and sometimes we forget to thank the people who've been doing things to help us. And members of Congress and their staff are humans like all of us and like to be thanked for the work that they do. So it's always important to thank folks who have helped us, but there's more that they can do right now. So they can, and we can help you brainstorm depending on who your member of Congress is. They can reach out to other members of their state delegation who have not co-sponsored and urge them to co-sponsor, or other members of Congress that they have close relationships with. Maybe they sit on a particular committee with a member of Congress. Um, you know, Members who have relationships with other members, helping urge to get co-sponsorship. Also, just making noise. What we're particularly focused on right now is asking Ways and Means members to go to the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee. His name is Jason Smith, and he's from Missouri, and he's the person who decides whether or not this bill is going to move through committee. So right now, we're focused on having members and if whether you're members on Ways and Means or not, they can reach out to Chairman Smith and say, it's time to move this bill. You need to make sure that you move this bill. So if you want some specific ideas, I think, Maggie, are you going to share your contact information maybe in the chat? Reach out to Maggie and we can help you, give you some specific ideas on what more your member can do beyond co-sponsoring the bill.
Great, thanks. And yeah, Michelle Garfinkel, if you're listening and you can add my email to the chat, that would be great. I seem to be having a little technical issue answering chat questions, but she's doing a great job for me. One other question for you, Melanie, from Deborah, and she's asking, what about the Senate? Where do we stand with the Senate on this bill?
Again, thank you it's a really good question. We are right now for the next couple of weeks very focused on the House because that's where our momentum really is. But we haven't forgotten about the Senate. There is a bill that's been introduced in the Senate, and we are collecting co-sponsors for that bill. What's really important to us right now in the Senate is finding Republican co-sponsors, because the way the Senate has decided to manage things, which happens with a lot of legislation in the Senate, is they're using what we call the Noah's Ark approach, which means that when we're adding co-sponsors to a bill, they're going to add them in bipartisan pairs. So right now I believe we have 3 Republican co-sponsors and then a bunch of Democrats who are sitting on a waiting list, waiting for a Republican partner. And at some point, those waiting list people will get put on the bill. And the reason we're doing that, there's a strategic reason for that. In the Senate, everything we do, we really try to do in a bipartisan way. And we're concerned that if the bill looks overly lopsided, that we will then no longer be able to add additional Republicans to the bill. So we want to keep it as balanced as possible until we sort of have satisfied ourselves that we don't think we're going to get additional Republicans on the bill. So we're focused on that in the Senate. We continue to talk to leadership over on the Senate side and keep them apprised of the work that we're doing in the House and the fact that we hope we're getting close to moving the bill on the House side. And we've been told, and although, nothing is ever final until it's completely final, we've been told on the Senate side, if you can get it moved through the House, like we'll find a vehicle, we'll find a way to move it in the Senate. So while our focus in the House right now is really getting the bill to move, our focus in the Senate, it's especially right now, is finding Republican co-sponsors, but overall, reaching out to senators and asking them to co-sponsor the bill.
Thanks, Melanie. We've gotten a couple of questions about specifically putting pressure on Chairman Smith, and thank you for those who are interested in doing that. We will have a specific script focused on him in the materials that we're sending around the day of action. So just stay tuned for that. That is coming and is part of our plan here. Melanie, Jolyn and Janine and a few others have sort of asked various forms of the same question, which is what's holding us back here? And then Leanne has also asked, who's one of our great advocates from Virginia, has asked, What are we hearing as a result of the pressure we're putting on so far?
Yeah. So as far as what have been our challenges, we kind of hear pushback on the legislation in two different buckets. We either hear, and this tends to be more on the Republican side of the aisle, people that are very fiscally conservative. They're concerned about the cost. um, and how much is the bill going to cost, and then and in the House in particular, there's a rule that requires that any legislation that actually has a cost, you have to identify sort of a cost savings somewhere else to offset that cost. Now, um, there are the rules, and lots of bills get passed without sort of actually adhering to the rules. So we know that if there's enough momentum and political support, that we can make things happen. But that is one of the, if you're going in and talking to an office, and I see Tonsa's nodding her head, she's familiar with this. That's one of the reactions we get. Over on over on the Democratic side of the aisle, sometimes the challenge we get is, well, if we do this for breast cancer, aren't we going to have to do it for everyone else? And the way I usually respond to that is, well, sure, you should do it for everybody else. But we're a breast cancer organization, and this is the community that we're representing. And we've been fighting this fight for 8 years now. And there's frankly not another piece of disease-specific legislation out there. So why would you deny these really important benefits, to this community who's been building this momentum, sort of while we wait for a broader solution. So those are the two general um, areas of challenge that we experience. But we know, and the reason that we've engaged in this push, this really important grassroots push, is if we're making enough noise and if enough members are hearing about this, that their constituents are demanding it, then they tend to find ways to sort of get around the obstacles that have been placed before us. So that's really, our goal in this campaign is to make enough noise and put enough political pressure on all of these members of Congress, basically to get them to do their job and figure out sort of how to solve these problems. And was there another question that I didn't answer, Maggie?
What kinds of responses have we heard back from the
Oh,
committee?
well, I've definitely heard, I've been up on the Hill for the last couple of weeks, and I've heard directly from staffers when I say, oh, you'll likely be hearing from our advocates, and they tell me, oh, we've been hearing from them. So that's good. Keep that up. We want that to continue. Um, so yeah, and when we've actually, NBCC staff has been calling into offices, and when we're doing that, we're getting told by the staffer who's answering the phone, oh, we've been hearing about this bill. So definitely offices are hearing about it. What any feedback beyond that, I can't really share yet. I hope to learn more when we're on the Hill next week on Tuesday. I'm definitely going to be listening for that sort of feedback, and because we're part of what we're going to be telling offices when we're up there next week is that we are engaging in this campaign, and this campaign is going to go forward for the remainder of the year, and we're making noise, and you're going to be hearing about us, and there's going to be social media and other media, and so you're going to be hearing about this, and so I'm looking forward to hearing what the staffers have to say when we tell them that.
Thanks, Melanie. We have a couple more legislative questions, but I want to bring Denise and Tonsa into the conversation a little bit here. I actually have a question for you, a genuine one. We're scattered all over the country. This has been a long, drawn out fight for many, many, many of the people on this call. Denise, you talked about how it has taken years, literally after years of working on a specific office, Representative Moore's office. You just got him signed on as a co-sponsor. He's a Republican on the Ways and Means Committee. You left me a message coming out of the airport a couple of weeks ago because you were so excited that you finally got him on. And I just want to, while those moments are important and drive us forward, I want to ask, what do you all do as advocates when you get frustrated, when it feels a little hopeless? How do you keep yourself inspired to keep going?
Um, I presume drink heavily is not the answer that you're looking for, right? So I won't offer that. Sometimes I just take a little bit of time for myself, moments, either a walk. I love to ride my bike. I have a great support network. Sometimes I talk to my therapist, but at the end of the day, quitting and failure is not an option. I recognize I'm alive today because of the work of NBCC. The drugs I'm on are things that you guys advocated for. Metastatic breast cancer was not on my particular dance card. It wasn't something that I'd even I heard of, but not really thought about. And I think about my 5-year-old granddaughter, who is the light of my life, and this cannot be a possibility in her life. And so that is honestly what keeps me motivated. And it's not about me, it's about others and the opportunities for living that they deserve.
Thank you, Tonsa. Denise, do you want to share?
Sure. I totally agree with Tasa that all of those uh, things she gave were exactly how I think as well. But I think I also sometimes it is frustrating. And so sometimes I just say, okay, walk away for a little while. Don't do the regular Tuesday call if that's what you have on plan. Set another plan. Say, okay, I'm going to revisit this, and then it's somewhere deep inside of us that we dig and say, why am I doing this? And when you find the meaning of why you're doing this, whether it's your grandchildren, your children, your friends that have had the disease, uh, you you get like rejuvenated to say, I know why I'm doing this, and I'm just going to continue to fight the fight. And I'm going to, even though I have Senate offices that are really hard to work with at times. But I say I'm still going to make the appointment. And people look at me sometimes and say, "Oh, you're just dropping off a folder because they didn't make an appointment with you, even though you're there for lobby day." And I said, "Yes, because I want them to know I'm still here. I'm still fighting the fight. I'm still working." And so that gets me back into, all right, I can do this, and that I'm not going to give up. And I, again, as Maggie mentioned, I was so excited. I never thought that we would get Representative Moore to sign on, although his staffer said, I'm really working hard that last 6 months to try to get him involved. And for him to turn around, it just makes all your efforts worthwhile. You may not get that kind of response, but it's there. You just don't give up.
Thank you both. I think it's important to pause and remember that there are tough lulls in some of this work, right? And so thank you for sharing what keeps you both going when it does get tough. I really appreciate that, as I'm sure everyone does who's listening. Um, we have another legislative question, Melanie, and that is Tansa, when she was speaking earlier, mentioned that there are other diseases that have had these waiting periods waived. Can you talk a little bit about how that came about?
Sure. So yes, Tonsa mentioned there has been precedent for this happening, and the most recently it was with ALS. And again, I do think, and it was essentially the exact same thing we're doing for breast cancer was done for ALS. They happened to do it in two separate bills. So first they waived the Medicare waiting period, and then a couple of years later they had a bill that waived the SSDI waiting period. And it frankly, again, it came down to political momentum and enough political support. And so again, and I want to also thank both Tonsa and Denise for their stories about that, because it truly is persistence. You might get 100 no's, and many of our advocates we've heard over the years tell stories. There are certain members who told them no, 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 and they just kept coming back. I mean, and that's at the core of NBCC. We don't take no for an answer, and it's like, well, if you tell me no today, I'll be back tomorrow, and one of these days the answer is going to be yes. But persistence from constituents, and again, and that's why this campaign is coming together, because enough persistence and noise and consistency from constituents will often change a member's mind. And so it's just critically important. And so we need to raise the noise level. We need to continue to show the overwhelming support for this legislation. And I believe that's ultimately what it's going to take for us to get this done.
Thanks, Melanie. I'm gonna take there's a couple more that have come in here. When will the social media posts and hashtags be ready to share? So you've gotten a link already in the chat to some of that sample language, and we can always help if you need to find something else. And we'll share it again on Monday and again on Tuesday, and we'll keep sharing it till we don't need to anymore. And then we got a question also. Joanne asked about, have we heard anything about a markup of the bill? So as Melanie was explaining, that's what we are pushing for. As soon as we hear anything like that, for certain, we will certainly let folks know if that's going to occur. So as of right now, no, but that is exactly what we're pushing for, a date and a certainty that that's going to happen. Melanie, there's a great question from Mary Ellen. She's wondering, can we just go back to who exactly this bill addresses?
Yeah, so um, to be eligible for these benefits, you have to have been diagnosed with metastatic breast cancer, and you have to have enough FICA tax work credits. And so what that essentially means is that you have I can't tell you what the exact sort of equation is, but it's generally you have worked for the last five of the last 10 years. So, for example, if you're someone who's never held a job, so you haven't paid employment taxes, you're not going to be eligible for SSDI or for Medicare coverage. But the other argument that we make in Hill offices all the time is this is not an extension of benefits. This is not a charity program. These mostly women have paid for these benefits. They've paid through their employment taxes. Um, and you're just sort of prolonging the period of time before they can gain access to these benefits that they're eligible for and they've paid for. So that's an important distinction to make when you're talking to members of Congress. Um,
And then another question about the eligibility. Are the waiting periods concurrent or are they stacked?
so they're sequential. So you wait 5 months to gain eligibility for Social Security disability insurance, and then there's a 24-month waiting period for access to Medicare, and so that becomes a 29-month waiting period.
All right. Well, I know we only have a couple of minutes left. Um, we really so appreciate, especially Denise and Tom. So thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your story and why this matters. And I know all of you who have listened in also have your own reasons for why this matters. So we really appreciate it. We hope that you will review the materials we're going to send out and take part in this important campaign. It is one important way to tie us all together, no matter where we are in the country working on this important issue. Have a wonderful weekend, everybody, and we will be in touch soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.